Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Her Faith Inspires podcast, where we take cultural issues and we tackle them with biblical truth. I have a guest on the show today that is going to help us understand the challenges that young people are facing in our culture today and how we can help combat some of those doubts and answer some of those questions in the most effective ways possible. And that is going to happen here with Dr. Jeff Myers. Dr. Myers, thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
I am too. Yeah, this is a huge topic and this is a I really appreciate your tackling it.
Well, I wanted you to just, before we get into all the questions that I have, can you just briefly tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, well, I head up a ministry called Summit Ministries. We're based in Manitou Springs, Colorado, and we help young adults embrace biblical truth and prepare to be leaders who make a difference in the culture. So we do that in a bunch of different ways, but one of the ways is through a 12-day epic experience the students can have in the mountains of Colorado or in Georgia. Now, it's not like hiking. We hike and we do, rock climb and all of that. But this is our chance to bring young adults together with top Christian thought leaders who open up the Bible to them, help them understand how to read the Bible, how to apply it to every area of life, and then prepare them with a Christian worldview so that when they go off to a college or university or start a business or whatever they're going to do, they can be confident that they know the truth and then bring flourishing to the culture around them.
I can attest to the fact that this is a extensive, like a really intensive 12-day. And when people think of camp, summer camp, they think floating down, and jumping in the lake on floaties, those big like floaties that they put out there, and a lot of kumbaya singing around the campfire and getting, probably not getting as the I think the mind overwhelming mind instruction that my son went, and he came home and he's like, I'm tired and I'm probably going to be tired for a couple of days, but it was amazing. And he filled out a notebook like this thick. It just took notes the whole time. So it is not like, when you hear the word camp, I don't want people to think, oh, this is another summer camp. It's not. And when you say the world's best thought leaders, these kids are getting training that some will only go to college to maybe be introduced to. So it's,
Yeah.
as a parent, it's like it's great to know what your kids are getting into before they go. And my question to you is, because I used to be in youth leadership and we used to go put on camps, but I wish I could rewind the clock and go back and do more apologetics. But what made you want to decide to go do something like this and put on camps like this? Because I know there's Georgia and Colorado. My son went to Georgia.
Mhm.
And that's not easy because you guys are cycling through 12 days throughout the whole entire summer, right?
That's right. I think this last summer we had 9 of those 12-day experiences, and they are intensives. Camp is not a great word for it.
Mhm.
We work hard, we play hard. So when we're in class, we're studying really hard. You're learning to ask tough questions. You can bring all your tough questions with you. The professors are not afraid of them. And then when we play, we play. We do a lot of sports as well. We do hiking, whitewater rafting, and things like that. But I think the key is you're getting together with 200 other young adults, realizing I am not alone and I am not crazy.
Mhm.
I want to be somebody who makes a difference. And here they are, all of these other people who I can be friends with for the rest of my life. They almost become like a leadership cohort, Shonda, that really lasts for the rest of their lives. So, how I got into it, I attended the program myself. It started in 1962 when I graduated in from high school in the 1980s. My parents arranged for me to attend, and they knew my faith was really shaky. What they didn't know, what they later found out, was that I intended to graduate from church as soon as I graduated from high school.
Mm.
I was not going to be involved anymore. And that's not uncommon. 70% of young people, according to different surveys, who are significantly involved in church in their high school years are no longer even attending church by the time they reach their mid 20s. They have lost the plot. And it's not just, oh, that's too bad. They're not in our tribe anymore. There are fewer of us. No, no, no. If Jesus really is the truth, to walk away from his word is to literally walk away from reality and embrace kind of a fantasy world.
Mm.
And what happens to young adults? I mean, the statistics could not be more obvious. We have the most depressed, anxious generation, fearful generation. 53% of sixth graders say they believe the world is going to end during their lifetime because of climate change.
Mhm.
And then you have on top of that the confusion about whether there is such a thing as truth. Do we really seek the truth or are we just speaking our truth? When young adults have a chance to get clarity, to come and think hard and to ask all of their tough questions. We don't beat anybody over the head. We're not shoving anything down anybody's throat. We're just presenting a biblical worldview as a means of bringing flourishing and clarity and understanding and confidence, especially the more confusing the culture gets.
Yeah, and I think that's something our culture doesn't appreciate about young people is that they don't just want to feel their way through life. They want to think.
Yeah.
They want to have that intellectual stimulation of let put this concept or idea in front of me and let's get to the bottom of that. And I know Summit does that. So when you're looking at all of these kids coming in and flying in from other parts of the world in some cases, my son went completely alone. He didn't have a youth group or anything because he just was like, "I'm gonna do this," and he had went through some doubt, raised in a Christian home, went through some doubt about 15 or 16, and we got into apologetics mostly because I needed to answer his questions.
Yeah.
But he went to Summit because he really wanted that refinement. But what kind of backgrounds are most of these kids coming from? Are some coming in a faith crisis? Or, I mean, I'm sure they're all over the spectrum, but what are you seeing most?
Hmm. That's really tough to answer because every student's coming with a different story. I would say most don't come in a group. Most do come by themselves.
Mm,
Most are heading into a new season of life. They're in a window of opportunity. When you move from high school into college, there's this moment of opportunity. It's a window. It's uncertainty. I'm not sure what's going to happen next. I'm a little bit nervous about it. I'm open. I'm open.
mm,
There are other times graduating from college, it's like that, getting married, when people get divorced, they're also open. There are moments of openness. And a big one is that range from 16 to 22 years of age. So most of the students, I would say, struggle with a sense of purpose. I'd say three-fourths of them, and I don't think that's an exaggeration, do not have a sense of purpose that gives meaning to their lives.
mm.
I would say half of them have struggled with anxiety and depression. You wouldn't notice it on the surface unless you really opened up the conversation in a way that made them feel safe, safe to think, not safe from thinking.
Yeah.
You wouldn't necessarily know that, but they're not sure. Can I really make a difference? Do I want to make a difference? As a Christian, my friends are all going off in a totally different direction. Even some of my Christian friends are wavering. Is this really something worth standing for? Because if it is worth standing for, then I will.
Mhm.
That's the kind of student we're looking for. Some of them are in a faith crisis. Some of them they're not believers at all. I had one student who came this last summer and this was a little unusual. I wouldn't recommend this, but he would introduce himself. Hi, I'm Ben. I'm an atheist. Literally every single person he introduced himself to, he introduced himself as an atheist. But we had already talked with him and asked, look, we're not going to shove anything down your throat, but are you a learner? Are
Mhm.
you curious? Do you like to learn and grow? If you're not, if you're a stubborn person who nobody can tell you anything, this is not your program.
Yeah.
But if you're the sort of person who says, I want answers, I want to grow, I want to walk alongside of all of these other people, then to us, where you are in your faith journey is not the most important question.
Yeah. I love how you put it. It's a window of opportunity too. Like I think sometimes parents will look at that age and get a little bit frightened as to what decision will my child make if they go to college or even if they stay home, will they leave the church? They're at that adult age, but Dr. George Barna's research shows that people in their teens and 20s will start to test their worldview. It'll start to take reshape or reform and they'll start to articulate that. And I look at that as a window of opportunity, like you said, for a, a place like Summit to help refine that worldview. So when you're looking at kids coming in, what what do you would you suggest when they go home from Summit? what do we need to do as parents to help continue to refine and reshape and help them articulate what they believe? Because really, in language too, when you're developing language, the last thing you're able to do is really articulate it well. You're
Right.
consuming for so long and you're processing and understanding. And the very end of that is the articulation point. And that really does make sense even when it comes to worldview development. So, what do we need as tools to help them refine that?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. We've worked with a lot of students. In the time this ministry has existed, it's well over 1 million students who've come through our in-person courses, as well as through our curriculum courses that we offer for Christian schools and homeschools, and even students in public schools through release time education. 1 million. So we've gotten a pretty good sense of what needs to happen. And I think there are three things. The first, I'll give a scripture that goes along with each one of these. The first is to take every thought captive. 2 Corinthians 10:5. Take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. If Jesus really is the truth, and that's what he says in John 8:32. You follow my teachings, you will be my disciples, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. That word for truth in the original language means reality.
Mm.
Jesus opens up reality for us. And that's true in your psychology class as much as it's true in your job.
Yeah.
It's true in your residence hall, but it's also true when you think about economics or politics or anything else. So that's foundational. The second thing is to not be taken captive. Colossians 2:8. Don't be taken captive by philosophies that are hollow and deceptive, that are based on human tradition, based on the elements of the world rather than Christ. So we introduce students to counterfeit worldviews they will be facing at a college or university, or even in the culture if they decide to not attend a college or university, helping them understand those worldviews and how they fall short, how they give a fake narrative about how we got to where we are, how they give a fake narrative about what our problem is, why we're broken, how they give a fake narrative about how we can really be fixed. And once students understand the truth up against those counterfeits, the counterfeits, they just don't seem nearly as compelling. You look at a TikTok video and you're like, yeah, I used to think that you probably had a really good point, but you've got one point, and I've got all of these other reasons to think that what you're saying simply isn't true. So that's the second step.
Mhm.
So take every thought captive, set the second is to not be taken captive. And the third one is to set the captives free.
Mm.
Like you're saying with your son, you come home with a notebook, you're tired. Everybody's tired at the end of a 12-day experience. That's the whole goal. I mean, you want to leave it all on the court. You work hard, you play hard. But you've gotta wake up and go back to your job or into your school or be with your friends, and how do you articulate the truth? So we spend a lot of time helping students think through and practice dialogue.
Mm.
What do you do when you face this idea or that idea? How do you respond intelligently without being arrogant? How do you respond compassionately without being a pushover? And mainly we do that, Shauna, by teaching students to ask questions. We want them to maintain that posture of curiosity. I mean, you might not know the snappy response to give, like the people you follow on TikTok or, the people who get 2 million views on YouTube. That's not important. What's important is you believe that you're going to walk alongside of people to discover the truth, and you're going to do that for the rest of your life. And if you do, you will be the respected person. You will get a sense of purpose, and you will understand increasingly through time how basing your faith in Jesus literally opens up reality and makes it possible for you to be a blessing to the nations of the earth.
Mm. That's good. That's really good. And those are practical. And I think we can remember them because they have the word captive in there a lot.
Yeah.
I love it, like little things that I can attach my brain to for memory. But I was watching one of your interviews, and I love this, by the way, because I feel like it's so important. But the way that you articulate this by saying the DNA of influence,
Mhm.
because everybody wants to know, well, how do I influence other people, how do I make disciples? And I don't know that that word disciple is as popular as it should be within the Christian culture, but I always tell people we're a disciple. Everybody's a disciple of something or someone. It's
Yeah.
just who are we? Who's discipling you? And you talked about the DNA of influence. Can you tell us what you mean by that and why that's so important to think of as a parent, as a teacher, when you have what I would say students under us, whether it be your child or you're teaching in a Sunday school class, what's the DNA of influence?
Mm. Well, if you can picture in your mind a DNA molecule, the picture of it that we have is of two strands that are connected. It looks like a twisty ladder. And those connections, the nucleotides, tie together those two strands. So, with that picture in mind, I try to help people imagine there are two strands to the DNA of influence. I mean, if you change a cell, that cell's going to die, and there are millions of others. But if you change the DNA of something, then those changes carry on for forever. So, two strands, truth and relationship. Truth focused because if you aren't standing for the truth, then you're just reproducing your own personal opinions.
Mhm,
But relationship, because how you communicate the truth matters. Truth without relationship comes across as arrogant.
mhm,
Relationship without truth comes across as apathetic. And everybody knows somebody like this, somebody who always has a snappy answer. They're sure of everything. Nobody wants to talk with them. They never get questions.
mhm,
Why? Because everybody's like, as soon as I ask them a question, they're gonna come down me like on me like a sledgehammer. I'm just not gonna talk about it. Just avoid that person because they're arrogant. But on the other hand, we also know people who are just like, you know what? It doesn't really matter.
mhm,
Just all get along and
mhm.
your truth, you have your truth, I have my truth. Nobody wants to talk to people like that either because they're just so accommodating that you're like, it can't possibly be the case that nothing really matters. There has to be something worth standing for. And when you take truth and relationship and tie them together, you realize, oh, this is it. This is exactly how the church grew. Use the term disciple. Jesus started off with, well, probably 70 some disciples. There were 12 who were the closest to him. But if you look at the growth of Christianity, you realize, man, when those guys got to Rome, there were just a couple of them, maybe 5 or 6. And within 200 years, there were millions. Now there are billions of Christians all over the world. What's going on? It is that idea that you reproduce. And it isn't just, oh, there are billions of us, so we can take control of everything. That isn't the point. Actually, the point is the billions of Christians throughout time are the ones who have set economies free. They're the ones who developed modern science. They're the ones who developed art and architecture and music and all of these different things that have brought blessing and flourishing to the nations. So that's what we want for young adults, not just a person who survives. Okay, we're all fairly resilient. We're not gonna die from, being socially marginalized. But what we want is to be the sort of people who have a confidence that's placed in God, not in our own ability. So we have no reason to be arrogant. We have relationship ability that's based in the Trinity. Because if you think about God's nature, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, God is relationship. It isn't just something that he does, it's something that he is by his very nature. You take those things and put them together, as you can tell, I get pretty excited about it. And the impact is huge. We just finished a study of our graduates, even 10 years after they've come to the summit program, 80, I think the figure now is 86% of them are staying strong in a biblical worldview,
Wow,
even 10 years after a 12-day experience.
mm, that is awesome, and that should be an encouragement to parents because we can look around and think our kid just wants to be online, but when you're thinking about that DNA of influence where relationship is it supports the fact that you're pouring into them with truth when you're building that relationship. And I've read before that, and don't quote me on this, the minutes, but I believe it was somewhere around 45 minutes per week of meaningful conversation is all parents have with their teenagers per week, 45 minutes. That is not relationship building. And, but when you think about it, like, wow, if I start now just creating dialogue, asking questions, building this relationship, my child is going to be more inclined to listen to what I say rather than have that influence of their social media influencers, because really that they're going to help form that worldview, social media is, but they won't do it as effectively as in-person discipleship, because that is the true biblical model.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
so, yeah, so I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but that's my observation as somebody who does post online and who also has kids within that age range of age of 16 to 22 in my own home. And I see that they do want to talk. They want to talk at 10 o'clock at night, usually when you're wanting to go to bed, but that's they want to talk. So I love that DNA of influence idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Well, and for parents who are thinking, I don't know, I can't talk to my kid. I've got 4 children, and 2 of them were easy to talk to and 2 of them weren't. And it just personality, they're just different. But I would find that questions like, "Tell me more about that." If they say anything at all, "Tell me more about that." I don't underestimate the significance of playing dumb.
mm, mm,
Okay, because as a parent, you're like, "Oh, well, I got this, I got that," I don't, and sometimes out of fear, we feel like we gotta know everything. No, no, my best moments with my kids were just playing dumb. Like, I heard this song on the radio, and for the life of me, cannot figure out why it's popular. I know I'm really dense. Can you explain to me why people like this song and what's going on? And or, why do people wanna cuss in their music? I can't quite figure that out. Or everybody's playing this video game, what is it about the game that just draws people in? Can you help me understand? I even took my kids out when I was getting ready to give a talk on the Gen Z. What are the characteristics of Gen Z? So I got these 4 Gen Zers, took them out for hamburgers, taking your kids out first. My boys for a steak, I get a conversation, guaranteed, 90 minutes. But in this case, I took him out for hamburgers, said, "Okay, I gotta give this talk. I'm supposed to talk about your generation. What is it you think people would really need to know about you guys, about your generation? Just think about your friends, the people in your school. What is it that most adults don't know that they ought to know?" A fascinating conversation resulted from that.
mm.
Just because I'm asking, I'm playing dumb. And I do that in every area of life. Literally every week. I just got off of a call. "Hey, how do you do this?" Or "How do you do that?" I learned a long time ago, I need old people. And the more I seek that out, I teach students to seek that out, the wiser you can become. But it actually works in reverse with your kids too. It's weird.
Yeah, I appreciate that too, because as a parent, I'm a fixer, or I want to speak into that problem rather than sometimes draw it out from the kids by asking good questions. And that's great advice, because kids do want to tell you what they think the right way to do something, or to give their opinion. They're really eager to do that. So that's great advice. If parents, I was talking the other day about Summit itself and telling parents your kids are not likely going to see this and say, "Sign me up, mom," but it is an investment that kids are going to that parents want to make with their kids. My motto as a parent is, I'm gonna try to get the truth in front of my kids by using whatever resources that God has given to me. So no matter what, one day they can't say that I didn't tell them, or that I didn't make it possible for them to hear the truth and follow God. So I think Summit is one way to do that. For parents who are wondering what to expect or why to send their kids there, what is something else another reason they might want to consider Summit? I mean, besides the fact that there's an 86%, I would say, success rate with kids who go that are still following the Lord, that itself is enough to say, wow, kids need to go to this. But do you have any other insight that we would need to maybe consider?
No, I think I do. I'm trying to think of how to put this into as few words as possible. When students ask me, what book should I be reading? We encourage reading. If you want to be a leader, you've got to be a reader.
Mhm.
And I always turn them, among others, to C.S. Lewis's book, Mere Christianity. And I tell them, I want you to read this, not because you will understand it. I can virtually promise that you will not, at least the first time you read it. But I want you to read it because I want you to be familiar with the arguments. But more important, I want you to be familiar with how C.S. Lewis thinks.
Mhm.
How do really smart people think about things? How do they process when new information comes in? Nobody in my college experience ever taught me anything like that until I got to my PhD level. There wasn't anything like that. It was just, well, here are the facts, learn them. That's not the successful life. The people who become successful in life are the ones who figure out the patterns of life and how to successfully navigate them. Just like if you want to win a game, you figure out the patterns of play that lead to success. It is I think that one of the most important things parents can do is to say to their children, you may not look at this program and say, this is where I want to spend 2 weeks of my summer, but I need you to trust me. This is the most important thing that you can do during these 2 weeks. And when you come back, if you hated it, we can talk about it. Nobody comes back saying they hated it.
No.
I mean, maybe one or two, because they all realize, oh, you trusted me. Like, I became an adult in that program. I began to understand and take responsibility for things that are happening in the real world around me. I left all my childish impressions behind.
Mm.
And I feel like if parents could do that, just gain the courage to say, this is something that our family does, it would make a big difference. Now, if you're the kind of parent who says, I never force my child to do anything, just ask them whatever they prefer. If you really believe that your child knows more than you about what is going to lead to a successful life, then our program's probably not for you.
Mm.
But if you think, oh no, this is going to change our family and we really believe it and we're willing to make the investment, then we'd love for you to come to summit.org and take a look.
Yeah, it is an investment worth making. I'm a parent who sent my son. I have two other boys who can go, and or one of them, the youngest one, can't go yet. But my son refers back to what he learned at Summit as a resource. He doesn't question things like he used to. He looks to what he learned as a resource when he has questions or
Mhm.
when questions arise. There's a difference in that. That makes all the difference in the world. And he owns his faith. He has a relationship with the Lord, and Summit has helped project him, I feel like, further and deeper. And he's 21 now. And you're right. He went when he was just turned 19 and thinking about the future. So it was that transition year. And it was a good way to start that year off. So I really appreciate Summit and the work that you do, Dr. Myers. I love understanding the times. I have read through, highlighted, circled, referred back to with my own students on that book. So it's curriculum actually. So those of you who want to get your Dr. Myers resources. Can they find that at summit.org as well?
Yeah, that's also if you go to summit.org, it kind of says it gives you a choice, curriculum or conferences. If you're interested in the 12-day program, hit conferences. If you're interested in the understanding the times course or some of the other courses, we have them going all the way down to kindergartners, set up for Sunday schools, for homeschools, all different kinds of things. And you can see all of that on the website as well.
Oh, that's awesome. That's amazing. And I'll be sure to post that in the show notes so you guys can just go straight to it and link it. Thank you so much for being here, taking time out of your busy schedule to come and share your wisdom with us. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Shana, and thank you, and say hi to your son. And then, if you have any questions, anybody who has any questions, you can just call us too.
Mm.
We're real people, and we're actually here, and we'll talk with you through how to make the decision, how to arrange a 12-day program, how to, where in the summer, what the actual event is, and all of those things. We'd love to
Yes.
talk with you.
You guys are great. Sign your child up for Summit by going to summit.org. You can even use my code /Shanda if you want to find it. It's Shanda25 for $200 off registration. You won't be disappointed. I'm telling you, it's an investment worth making because, as Dr. George Barna tells us, there is a window of worldview development. And by the time a person is in their teens and 20s, their worldview is developed, but it is being questioned and it's being refined, it's being articulated. So this is our time as parents to seize this opportunity and get our kids an immersive, intentional experience that will give them the answers they need. If you have any questions for me, you can email me at hello@shandafulbright.com and I'll catch you on the next one.